Hi, this is Greg Chambers. Thanks for taking the time to listen to this webinar. It's a webinar that I produced about a week ago, got some feedback, and so I'm re-recording it so that it's available to you, and then I'll just leave this up as an evergreen. I'll minimize myself here on video so you don't have to look at me, and you can just focus on presentation. And once we go through the presentation, the reason you're here is because at some point, I'm sure I said, hey, you can double the value of your law firm using FIT. And FIT is a framework that I use for sales and marketing. And I have some law firm clients, and there's something that happened with a particular law firm that I'm going to share with you today. And that's what this presentation is all about. So if that's the case, we're in the right place. And get myself oriented. I'll jump right through. It takes about 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and I'll have you on your way. And then there's a bunch of goodies at the bottom of the page that you can access as we go along. The first concept that I need to put in your head, and really this whole presentation is built on, is this idea of perception. And I'm going to use this pack of gum because the big question is, what is a pack of gum worth, right? If you don't need gum, the pack of gum is worth zero. I could conceivably say it's worth zero, but for the most part, the market has it somewhere around $2. $1.57 a pack is what I pulled off of Amazon if you bought a whole case of this stuff. Let's talk about how we can double the value of that gum. You're out to dinner with a beautiful young woman, looks like a seaside resort right there, and I can't exactly tell what's on the plate, but how much is that gum still worth, right? That gum is probably still worth the same. Maybe as a backup, you think, oh, it'd be nice to have some gum just in case, something happens after dinner. Maybe $2, maybe $3. But it's still probably worth $2 to zero, I would say. Now, changing the scenario, the chef was heavy on the garlic, and things are going along, and this is probably what's going to happen. You're going to be getting very close to this young woman, and you're very self-conscious of the smell of garlic on your breath. Now, how much is that gum worth, right? If I said I had a pack and I was right there walking down the beach and I had a pack for you for $5 or for $10, would you pay it at that time? My point is that what changed, right? With that gum, is there anything different about the pack of gum here and the pack of gum on this side? And I would say no, right? The reason why it's worth double or up to 5 times more than it was originally is strictly because of perception. So using that idea that a value is in the eye of the beholder, right? The person who doesn't need gum would still pay zero for it. The person who is dying for a piece of gum to get this raunchy taste out of his mouth, it will pay $10 for it. The only thing that's changing there is perception, and value is all tied into that. We'll do this here as we run through this big idea. This big idea really was revealed to me. I've known about it, but then I guess I hadn't really thought about it in terms of the work I was doing with this law firm, which was around lead generation. People come to me to help them with business growth, and I was helping a firm, and then this, over the years, this developed, and I'll run you through this model. You should be here if you have a firm. If you don't have a firm, or if you want to buy into a firm, you'll find it maybe mildly interesting. But if you have a firm and you're looking to increase the value of that firm, this is a concept that you should put in the back of your head. And specifically, even if you have a firm, there's really 2 different types of people that have firms, right? One is a firm that is looking to maximize the cash that they take out of it. So I'm a lawyer, a law firm, and we're just trying to maximize the amount of money that we take out. What I'm about to describe to you is really not going to be anything more than mildly interesting, if that. So you can just jump off, take this information for another day. But if, on the other hand, you are a law firm and you're looking at that firm as an asset that you're trying to grow because at some point you're going to either cash out of it, sell it, or bring partners in, then this actually, you will find this interesting. And what you're going to walk out with today is we'll talk about how law firms are valued, what you read there on the left, ideas on how to increase that value, and then I'm going to give you an example where we were able to increase the value, and I'll tell you exactly how we did it. Let's start with how firms are valued. There's 3 main components, right? Revenue, which is obvious as far as if you were going to buy a law firm, the first thing you'd want to know is what kind of revenue does it generate? Then you'd be interested in what type of assets are there that I could be buying into, right? Is there a building? Is it just furniture? Is there a computer system, phone system? These are things that have value because they've already been purchased, and how much are they worth? And then there's this piece called Goodwill, and you're all familiar with it, but for me, it's an important piece when we look at how we can increase the value of a firm. The going rate these days, when I was looking up and talking to business advisors, is what can you expect? So if you add all this stuff up, what can you expect? And they're like, it's a multiple. You can take it times 0.5 all the way up to 1.5. Maybe if you're just starting out and you have low revenues, it's worth 0.25. But if the firm is doing $1 billion in bills and receivables, then maybe it's worth 1.5 times what all this stuff adds up to. So my next question is, well, then how do you determine that, right? So what exactly is it that goes into that? And that's where we end up with Goodwill. So breaking revenue into its own little piece, right, is there's always going to be revenue and cost of sales. What does it take to generate that revenue? Because if you're generating $1 million in revenue, but it costs you $1 million to get it, you're probably out of business. And that's why you're looking to sell the firm. But if you're able to generate a healthy margin, then it makes your firm a little bit more valuable. So on the revenue side, we'd be looking for, well, if I want to increase the value of my firm, the first thing I'd like to do is increase the amount of business that I do. And ideally, I'd like to do it with as little labor as possible, right? So I don't necessarily want my cost of sales to go up all that much, or at least I want the increase in revenue to outpace the cost of sales on there. Looking at like assets, I'm sure there's a way to increase the value of your assets. I'm not interested in talking about that, unless of course it's like real estate, then we could get into the value of that. But I'm assuming that there's just no change in assets. And Goodwill then becomes even more interesting to me, right? So when I looked at that, what we did is we put together a lead generation process, and I want to tell you about how that impacted Goodwill. So inside this lead generation process, what I will describe here, you already have the gist of what it is I'm going to be talking about, but I will tell you about our lead generation process and why it was that helped increase Goodwill, as well as did a number on revenue and the cost of sales. So let's jump into this lead generation process and talk about how it impacted Goodwill. And the first thing we start with on any lead generation process, when I talked about that original fit framework that I plug everybody into, the first thing we start with is the vision, right? It's the ability to, where we are today, we have a good idea of where we want to be tomorrow, because then that will direct our purposes. And I bumped into this when I was reading the talent code, and which I just happened to finish. So it's fresh in my mind. Long-term commitment. So what this said was that people that made a long-term commitment versus a short-term commitment, the long-term people outperform the short-term people by up to 400%. And that's why it's important, right? That's why it's important when you're starting on this process, that if you are trying to increase your asset value, you do it on purpose from the beginning, because you will spend less time doing things that don't fit the vision. I bumped into this. Here's an example. I bumped into this with my kid. My kid goes to a little high school, and this little high school has a band program, which I know nothing about bands, so this is fascinating to me. But he has been at the top of the band world. Like they get rated on all the way up to superior, and he has produced superior teams. And these are giant. I mean, this is probably 50, 60 kids in the band. He's gotten superior ratings for like 27 years in a row. And so you hear that and you think, oh, that's interesting. I wonder if my kid's going to be part of it. He's a pretty good musician, but I have no idea what it means inside of the world of a band. Well, the first day, the guy gives us like a whole 8-page, this is my philosophy of how I do things. And this is the way you have to, your kid is going to learn this. And this is what they're going to do freshman year to sophomore year to junior year to senior year, to the point where they can make all-state junior and senior year if they just follow this program. So that's vision, right? That's having a purpose. And one of the things that he's also done is he has them listen to, he suggests on the way back and forth to school, that they listen to their pieces being performed professionally by a professional that he hires from the local college, and they come and practice it. But his point is, if they hear it every day, and if they're focused on this, that's how they get to the goal. So that's the first step, is the vision of having the lead generation process in place and why it's important. And then what we do is we jump into your firm, right? Generally, most firms have multiple people working there. Each of those people brings certain strengths to the table. So if we can focus on strengths, and when I say strengths, I'm really talking about a very particular thing, which is the VIA test of character strengths. And if you haven't bumped into that, jump into it. It's a VIA. Gosh, I guess I don't even know what the website is. You're gonna have to look it up. It's VIA test of character strengths. It's free, and what it does is it rates you, or you rate yourself on these 25 strengths, and basically it gives you a report that says these are the things that I think I am best at, my particular character strengths. Very close to Gallup in Omaha, Nebraska here. We've got a lot of Gallup people around. So this is very close to that, but they're character strengths, so they're just a little bit different. Like humor is one of mine that ties into humor, strength of ideas. So whether or not I'm funny, objectively, doesn't matter. This is just my perception, right? If I think I'm funny, that's what the strength is. And the way we use that inside of the reason why you would find this important is because as you're building your lead generation process, one of the things that you need to do is you need to make sure that it's taking advantage of the strengths of everybody in your firm. So even the people that are like, I'm not going to help with lead generation at all, if you can get them to help you just a little bit, and they will help you if they're able to use their strengths to get that done. We've got a lot of examples of that. But with the U.S. Open, Serena's up, right? And Serena's on, and she's going to dominate and make it really far in the tournament probably again. There's a little commercial with Watson where she's talking to that IBM computer, and he says, "Oh, I've noticed that on, when you fall behind, you serve aces like 60% of the time more than your competitors." Her strength, right? Her strength is she can always go to it, and she's comfortable with it, but it's her serve, her tennis serve. So if you're not a tennis fan, maybe that didn't make any sense, but if you are, think of it in those terms. You're trying to get your people to use their strengths, but then use it towards lead generation. That's what we do there. And from the VIA Institute, that's what actually, I think it's viainstitute.org. But if you use people who use their character strengths at work, it's directly connected to productivity. This goes well beyond lead generation, but I think if you apply it to this lead generation process, what you're going to find is your people are plugged in, and they will help you find more leads. And when you find more leads, you generate more revenue, your cost of sales goes down, it all works in your favor. And then the last thing we do is we use technology to lock everything in place. And what I mean by that is, instead of looking to technology to fix things for us today, what we do is we start with the vision, we work on our strengths, we develop our process internally, and then we go to technology and start asking it to help us improve on the process that we've developed with our vision and strengths. We don't do this backwards. We don't start with technology and then run up the line. Instead, we develop what it is we're trying to develop, and then we apply technology. And an example there would be, think of Amazon. So I just ordered something from Amazon the other day, and like clockwork, about 2 days after my package comes, I get a note that asks for feedback. Please leave feedback on the packaging, and then that leads to please leave feedback on the item and the seller. So Amazon knows that the more reviews there are on a product, the more likely you are to buy it. And if you have to go to Amazon to see, 2,500 reviews on a product, you're right there. The first time they get you to buy something, now it's even easier because now I've got one-click buying and Amazon Prime, all that other stuff that goes along with it. That's an example of using technology. They didn't start by thinking about the review process and how do we generate more reviews automatically. They figured out, we can get reviews if we catch these people right after. What's the way that we build the technology? And then instead of just asking for a review, let's ask for feedback on the packaging and then move from there. So that would be an example of using vision and strengths and technology. And let me tell you what happens once we apply these things to this gets applied to the lead generation process, right, which ties back into Goodwill. So the future firm that you have, when you have this, when you think of it in these terms, is it's split into three pieces, right? We've got revenue, which we will take at, it's always going to be worth what it's worth, right? 0.5 to 1.0 to 1.5. I'm not sure that changes just because, other than if you have more of it, right? A $10 million firm is worth more than, the multiple is going to be higher than $1 million, and it's going to be less than one that's at 100 million. Assets are going to stay the same, and Goodwill is actually going to become a player in this. And what we're going to do is we're going to end up driving the total value of what the firm is worth. We're going to bump that up, right? So instead of 1.5 or 0.5 being the lowest, 1.5 then becomes the lowest in this example. And not only do we do that, but we also get this increased cash from generating more revenue and the goodwill, right? Which is why they would buy. Like, why am I buying into this and why should I trust that it's there? A lead generation process helps with. What I'm finding is one of the things that lawyers in general, so if you happen to be great at this, I applaud you, but I talk to a lot of lawyers who struggle with finding new business. And that's what a lead generation process does. And let's jump into where we've actually seen this happen. So in this example, the names of the names have been protected or changed to protect the innocent, and the numbers are very round based on these conversations. But this was the trend that we were at with this firm. The 3-year average revenue was going to be around 380, not bad. Two-person firm. Assets on hand, there's a few things that go into this number, but for the most part, they weren't interested. They're not interested in selling the building. Going on, and let's just say that Goodwill, the fact that they've been around for a while, a long time, the name's been around, it's got a little bit of traction in the marketplace. That goes into Goodwill. So what is the multiplier on those things, right? Revenue, we say, they're not tiny, and it's a very lucrative 380. So we'll take that. We're not going to give them 100. We're not going to take 100% of that as the value, but we'll take that at 0.75. Assets, whatever. We agree on that 65. But Goodwill, the revenue's up and down. Why are we doing this? And then the partner takes it to the future partner takes it to the banks and financial advisors, right? And their first question is, well, why wouldn't you just do this yourself? What prevents you from just hanging this out if we're just being devil's advocate, right? The same thing that any advisor would do. Prove to me that this is worth what we say it's worth. But let's say that's 400,000 and that's what they were at, right? This is a reasonable buy-in number that the future partner would be expected to buy in on. This is what actually happened. We were able to increase revenue over that 3-year period to where it's an average of 480. Now, in there is a couple big years, but we've actually loaded the works in progress into there are cases coming down the road that are going to be great. And so let's say, gosh, now that's actually worth, we totally trust in it. And the reason we trust in it is not because the assets have changed, but it's because this goodwill piece, we know exactly where that revenue is coming from. And when somebody says, well, if one partner leaves and I step in, how do I know that things are going to continue? Because it's not dependent on that partner, right? The lead generation process is actually what's driving the revenue into the business. The new partner was more comfortable. The bankers were more comfortable, right? And they've got to finance the thing. And then the financial advisors, all the advisors were more comfortable with the whole thing. So what we end up with is $300,000 in new revenue, an asset that's worth another, say, 100,000 close to, and all it was a regular investment of, it's a lot of money, right? $60,000 a year that went into that, but that was paying for, $300,000 in revenue. So it's always been providing a positive ROI for us, but it was an investment. And here's the thing, and this is why I think that when I said at the beginning that you can double your firm's value with this information, is because this is a process that is completely replicable. You can do this because we weren't looking to do this when we started. This was not the vision. The vision was drive revenue in a cost-effective way and get better at it as we go along. and we are much better at it today than we were year one. The those principles of lead generation, they followed best practices from other industries. So it wasn't like it was a very lawyer specific thing. It was simply using the tools that were available to us across all marketing. We've looked at e-commerce, we looked at business to business revenue, we looked at anything. And that gives me hope that no matter what it is, no matter who it is that you're targeting, if people need to find you, there is a way to build a lead generation process that will help them find you faster and do it in a cost-effective way. And again, knowing that the 400% increase, I think if we would have started this out 3 years ago and knew what we knew today, which of course we didn't, but if we did, we would have done an even better job at building that story, building that value. So that's the big concept. And hopefully it makes sense to you. If it doesn't, I've got resources that should help you with that. So my Right Fit newsletter gives weekly ideas on sales and marketing topics, on the general topic of sales and marketing. And these guys were instrumental in helping me get this put together because they loved the little tidbits of information that come through that help them remind them as to how to generate revenue in a cost-effective way. My book is a bigger version of, I do this little booklet and it's about 30 some pages, but it has new ideas on business development, and inside there will be some ideas that you can take and apply them again. They're generic enough that you can apply them to your firm and make it happen. I put together a quick firm value assessment. So this is a self-assessment. You don't need to share it with me, and don't share it with anybody else. But you can go through it, answer the questions. It's one of these strongly agree, strongly disagree assessments. And then by adding up your score, it will kind of tell you, are you ready for this concept? And just, how much of this stuff do you need to familiarize yourself with before you jump into it? And then I've also got an article that I wrote from a past business that I did, and how this became mighty clear to me because I was working in a very particular good. I was selling tropical shirts, and I saw, because it was thrust right in my face, exactly where perception meets value. And if that's not enough, and you want to go deeper into this, of course, the reason I put this out there is because you can get results faster with my help, guaranteed. Some people actually won't ever get results without my help, but others of you, even if you could figure this out yourself, you've got it's not the best use of your time, so schedule a call. And we can do 30 minutes is probably more than enough time. Skype or on the phone, and I will send you a different assessment. It's not exactly that assessment, even though that one would help. And just so that we can be on the same page, and then I will give you specific steps about your firm at no charge. And it will just be 100% focused on answering questions about applying these ideas to your firm and your market. And so I hope that that's been valuable to you. Download the slides. They should be at the bottom of the page, and then pull down all the PDFs and read. You guys love it. Most of the trainees I know, they love to read. So yeah, take a look through everything and see if that concept applies to you. And if you'd love to talk about it, or if you'd be interested in talking about it, by all means, get in touch with me. Thank you for your time. And if you bump into people who would be interested in this concept, by all means, refer them to this presentation. Thank you.